Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to Building My Legacy podcast. Today, I have with me Shana Recker. She has an interesting academy. It's called the Dream Hustle Academy. And it is there to help startups, entrepreneurs, those of you who are finishing your careers and you're looking at, okay, what am I going to do next? And what's that legacy I'm going to create? Well, she's got some wonderful ideas in terms of how do you get your story out there and really begin to develop that. So, Shana, that's the beginning. Oh, I think the other thing that's very interesting, those of you who are women will enjoy listening to this, is she made incredible use of her maternity leave and used that time to really develop this business and look at the curriculum that was necessary to do this. She comes out of a graphic designs background. So, Shana, I'll let you take it from here and fill in the gaps of what you think the audience might want to know. And then tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you help entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And it's actually interesting because I didn't, it's not like I planned to be an entrepreneur. It's not like it was something that I always wanted to do. For me, my start was in graphic design. And I think, I think everything we move into is leading us up, or it's getting us ready for that next evolution. So it was like I did graphic design for so many years. And then you're right, on maternity leave, I was actually introduced to entrepreneurship, but it was in a bit of a different form. I was introduced to network marketing, was where I started as an entrepreneur. And that really opened me up to the idea of working for myself, which, I worked in corporate for 15, it was about 15 years at that time. And so I was so used to just like the 9 to 5, you work for somebody else, you climb the corporate ladder. And then when I was introduced to network marketing, it was kind of like, so I can actually make, real money, like good income, and be at home. And so it was, I always knew I wanted to be my own boss, but I just didn't know how it would ever look. And so this was actually my first real taste of becoming an entrepreneur, is through the network marketing industry, which I love it. I think the industry is amazing. I still do have a network marketing business, but I'm not super active in it anymore. I did it for 10 years. And about that 7 or 8 year mark in that profession, I started to get this little nudge about wanting to show up and create my own thing online. And I think that's what happens for a lot of us, is that, when you're switching careers, because it sounds like a lot of your audience, they're moving out of one career and sort of starting into something maybe new or different, is like I got this little nudge. It was like a little whisper in my ear of like, hey, maybe you could try this, maybe you could get yourself out there in this way. And so it was in 2016 where I kind of had that nudge, like, what if you created a brand around coaching? At that time, I was coaching network marketers. I was thinking I could coach network marketing because I had made it to the top of my company and I had, created a great income. And I'm like, well, maybe I could teach other people, what I did, and create a brand around myself online. And so that's what I started doing. It took me a little while to finally jump in, because I had a lot of fears and hesitations, and all those doubts and things come up. And especially when you're putting yourself out there, it was different when I started network marketing, because you had your company to kind of sort of stand with, or stand sort of behind a little bit. But when it's yourself and all of a sudden it's your brand and it's your face and it's your message, it was a little trickier for me to kind of get that, get the push to do it. So once I finally did do it, it was at the time in social media when Facebook Live, Facebook Live is a great tool. It had first started coming out. And I think for me, it was, I was fortunate enough to not be afraid to hit the live button and go live and be on social media and share my words. And I just started doing that. and really just started coaching network marketers. And it was very successful in the first year. But I started to get that little nudge again that, I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't doing, it wasn't the right topic for me. I just started to kind of like, I don't know, for me, the passion around the network marketing piece started to kind of fade away, but I loved the online coaching space and course creation. And so what I started to realize is that I'd love to talk and teach people how I created my own brand online. I'd love to talk about the tools, the strategies I used, the mentors that I worked with, what I had learned. And so I started to realize that coaching and course creation is where I needed to be. But the topic that I wanted to coach and help people with was on how they could create something very similar like I did in a niche that was suitable for them. So now that's what I do is I have private clients and I have an online course, which is the Dream Hustle Academy, which helps entrepreneurs of all different, places and from all over the place create an online brand around themselves, teaching people what they know and how to do that. So that's kind of where we are today. And it's a lot of fun. It's an industry that's evolving so fast that you really have to, me as the coach and as the, academy creator, I'm always, having to learn and evolve it myself too. So it's fun. It keeps me hopping, keeps me in the loop of things. So yeah.
So you had a lot of things you had to learn and
Yes.
pull together, and you had fear. You were talking about that. So how did you keep your perspective so you were grounded and remained focused? Because
Go ahead.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs especially have.
Yeah. Talking about the fear piece, because I'm a big mindset, personal development person. I love to work on all of that stuff and teach that as well. And, the thing with the fear of getting, past, all those crazy self-doubt thoughts that go on in your head and stuff is that, you have to realize, and this is what I've realized, is that a lot of times what we think is going to happen, or what we, we're afraid to do something because we're worried about judgment and all of these things that, what are people going to think if I do this or say this or do that? And a lot of the stuff that I, thought in my head wasn't really real. And I had to take the action and actually do it and go through the fear in order for me to realize that 90% of the things that I was worried about weren't actually ever really true, and they never really happened. And so when it comes to fear, it's just something that I don't feel ever just goes away, but you do have to, take that one step and kind of push through it versus waiting for it to dissipate before you can actually do anything. And here's the thing is that if you have a passion for something and it's in your head and you keep thinking about it, it will eat you alive if you don't finally take a step and move towards it. And I think that's what happens sometimes is that, in order to push through the fear, you almost have to let it scratch at you from the inside long enough. And then you're just like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you realize it's not so bad. And so that's how it was for me. I just had to keep going through it. And and it's just been.
So you have a process you take people through. What does that process look like?
Yes, for sure. So when you're creating a brand around yourself online, and you have something that you want to share, the first thing I teach everyone is you have to get really clear on who you are and who you want to help and serve and why you want to help and serve them. And then as well as the results that you want to help them accomplish. And so it starts with you. I think it's a lot of times the entrepreneurs that I work with, they're helping people through something that they've been through, and oftentimes, like I say to them, oftentimes your ideal client, your ideal niche is a former version of yourself. And it's the case that's the case for me and for a lot of the other entrepreneurs that I work with. So you have to get really clear on your story, on what you've been through, your personality. Because sometimes, we never really do that sort of self-assessment on ourselves. It's like, well, who am I? Like, I'm somebody who's, I'm kind of, goofy, my grammar's never really that great. I'm like, but I let those things come out of my personality. I just kind of say things as they are, I'm super, authentic and vulnerable and all of those things. And that's part of my brand. And so it's about really understanding who you are and how you want to bring that to your brand and what parts of you want to bring to your brand. So we go through the clarity piece, how you help people transform, what your experiences are, what your skill sets are. And then once you have that clarity, then you move into connection, which is really creating the platforms where you can start connecting with people who would fit that ideal client avatar. So things like your social media channels, which ones do you need to be on? How do you set those up? What do you need to say on those channels? How do you create content? So it's phase 2 is all about setting up that connection point so that you can share your message, share your content, share your value, and attract in the right people. And then we work on branding after. Like, it's funny because when I start businesses with people, they often go, okay, well, let's build the logo and the website. And it's like, you don't need a website yet. You need to, there's lots of work that needs to be done before we get to branding and all the fun stuff. So we work on website and then and getting your platforms organized and your branding organized. And then the next phase is creating your actual offer, creating whether it's a coaching program, whether it's a group coaching program, an online course. Sometimes it's ebooks that they want to create. And sometimes it's a combination of things. So we definitely do that in phase 4. And then phase 5, we work on creating raving fans of your brand and of your products and how to do that. So so it's great because people can go through the system at their own pace. Some people want to go quick and they get through their clarity and they're like, they want to get to their offer and they want to start marketing. And then other people, they can go at their own pace. They can kind of take more time, to work through things if they need to. So
if you're fast and if you've come somewhat clear about who you are because maybe you're already highly specialized, let's say. Yeah. To go through the process, about how long does it take people?
Well, it's typically around, I would say anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks going through it.
Wow, that's pretty fast.
If you're fast. Like, I know for me, when I started my business, the urgency was there. I wanted to get this done in a certain amount of time. And so I was dedicated to it, right? It also depends on how much time you have to do the work, right? Because some of the women that come through my program, they've got young kids at home. They've only got a few hours a day to kind of, work on their business. So it's going to take them a little bit longer. But if you can dedicate, few out like 4 or 5 hours a day to working on getting the things set up and organizing your thoughts, you could have this stuff kind of laid out in as quick as 3-4 weeks, even if you're really dedicated to it.
So for you, when you work with people, what are their biggest challenges? What do they need to really deal with to be successful?
I think the biggest challenge that I find with most of my clients is imposter syndrome. So because they oftentimes, the coaches and the course creators that I work with come to me with this passion that they have, this thing that they know that they can help people with. And for instance, one of my clients, she's a yoga instructor. She's run a yoga studio for, I think 20 years. And now she wants to help yoga instructors create successful studios, but she's never been she's been a yoga teacher, but she's never been a coach and a course creator and somebody who's out there that's, so she, in her mind, her imposter syndrome says, well, who are you to do that? You're just a yoga teacher. You're not a coach. You never went to coaching school, And so, yes, I do believe that there are certifications and things that are required for certain things in life, for sure. But then there are things like, if you want to teach social media and you want to coach people on how to be, really good at social media, you don't necessarily need to have a coaching certificate in order to do that. But sometimes people get tripped up on that because they're changing gears. It's something they've never done. And they feel like, well, who am I to put myself out there and say that I'm a coach when I've never gone to coaching school, And it's like, yes, in some cases you may need that, but not in all cases. And so it's helping them overcome that fear of people will find out that I didn't go to school for this. People will find out that I'm not certified for this. And it's like, people don't care. Like, they want to know what you know. Like, if you have skill sets in something and you're really good at something and you've been through something, I would rather learn from someone who's been through what I want to learn than someone who just read a book about it and said, okay, I think I know everything, but's never done it themselves. So that it's getting them to understand that concept of people want that shortcut. They want to know the fastest route to get from A to B. And if you have it, even if you don't have a certificate on your wall, they'll pay for it. They want to know. And so I think that's probably the biggest one, the imposter syndrome.
I think it's interesting because I think women perhaps deal with that more than men do. I don't know that for a fact, but you tend to read about it and hear about it, particularly with women. Your thoughts, how do women overcome that?
Well, I know for me, I overcome it by talking about it a lot and working through it. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a coach is that, for me, when I was going through that personally myself, I had a coach at the time. Her name is Amber Lillystrom. She's amazing. And she was the one who, it's almost like she was like the voice of reason who kind of said to me, like, listen, like, I know you're thinking these things. Cause again, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. It's like, I was telling myself all these crazy stories. And I think that's the difference too, between men and women is men see things a little bit more black and white maybe. And women, we kind of like, I can create elaborate stories around what I think everybody's going to think about what I'm doing. Right. And I know I'll tell my husband these things that I think that's going to happen. I'll be like, oh, but I'm worried if I do this, this is all going to happen and whatever. And he's like, do you really think that's going to happen? And then I'm like, okay, great. But at the time for me, I was working with Amber, my coach, and she was the one who really helped me, just get, like you said at the beginning, get grounded in my thoughts and go, okay, what's real, what's not? Who are you? You can do this, these things, and just help reinforce my confidence so that I could overcome some of that stuff and get out there. And I think the other thing too is experience. The more you put yourself out there and the more you push through the fear and the more you just do it anyways, even though you feel that fear, the more confident you get. And the imposter syndrome, I don't think ever really goes away. I think every new level we evolve into in our businesses comes with a new sort of set of feeling like, that little bit of like, oh my gosh, who am I to do this? Like, okay, I just got 10,000 followers. Like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm on Instagram now. I'm an influencer now. Like, right. Like each new level that you grow into comes with that extra little bit of imposter syndrome, but you learn that it's not really real, that you can go through it and you did it before and you can do it again. Right. I think it's just a matter of maneuvering through it, but having the support is, I think, the biggest thing that has helped me in my journey of entrepreneurship.
So one of the things that I hear you say is having a skill set, having something to bring to the table is particularly useful. And when I talk with young people, 20s, out of college, freshly out of college, maybe 1 or 2 years of experience, I hear many of them say, oh, I don't want to be in the corporate world. I want to have my own business. I think I'll be a coach, right? And I have seen many of them just struggle because they don't have a business concept. Yes. And they don't know who they are. If you don't know who you are, you can't help somebody know who they are, right? Yeah. So there's a foundational piece there that is critical in terms of having enough data behind you that you can stop and say, this is who I am and this is what I'm really good at. And I know some young people that very young, and they're fabulous coaches, but they had life situations that made them address those questions. And so yes, they could do it at a very early age.
Well, and I think that's part of, with, especially like with the people that I know I work with, and my age group that I usually typically work with are 30s to 40s. It's they've had some life experiences that have allowed them to go, oh, okay, I've been through this. I know what it's like, and I can walk you through what I did, and I've learned some things. I've got some tools in my toolbox kind of thing where, if you're fresh out of school and you want to be a coach, I mean, unless you like, because, I will say there are a lot of people who have educated themselves very well on something, and maybe they haven't gone through it personally themselves, but they have, a lot of, knowledge around it because they've educated themselves, and they could definitely probably, help people with that as well. But I do find that the ones who have really experienced something are the ones who just because there's that empathy goes a long way too, right? It's like, I know how you feel, and I felt that too. And then this is what I did. And I think that there's an extra level of connection that the person you're coaching receives through that allows them to trust you and then go, okay, if you did this, then I can do this too. Where if you're saying, hey, I just went to school for this, I'm brand new out of school, I can help you, that level of trust is maybe not quite as strong. Do you know what I mean? And that can be something that just some time and some experience will help them. But I can see why that could be a struggle, and that would be a little bit.
Just an observation.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things as we're talking, you're very able to just fluidly share who you are and what your journey has been, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many times when we think that you're going to be a successful coach or successful on doing digital marketing, mm-hmm. that there's a hype, there's a spin, there's a personality type that's a hard sell that's going to prevail the most. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's really lovely the way you share who you are, because ultimately that's who people buy from. Mm-hmm. It's that sense of, okay, I'm safe here. I think I can explore and learn. What are your thoughts?
Oh, 100%. And I always, that's my go-to when I teach clarity. My biggest stressor, like the biggest thing I emphasize in this is that if you're going to be successful in the online space, authenticity rules 100%, because people can pick up on that energy, right? Like there's an energy that comes across when you show up and you speak you speak your truth. And yes, we get nervous, and yes, sometimes I have been, a little bit more robotic, especially in the beginning, because it took me a while. It's like the training wheels. Like you kind of have to go with the training wheels for a bit and do your best to be authentic, but maybe you're, a little bit stiff and rigid because you're still trying to figure it out. But there is an ease and a flow that comes with being authentic and vulnerable and open and honest about how you really are. And I think that when you don't show up authentically, you get resistance, and it's resistance from your audience. It's resistance. Like that's why for me, when I was coaching network marketing, I was actually coming up with resistance. I was coming up to resistance, and it started to not flow very well. And I was starting to struggle with what I was going to say. And like, I could tell something was going on, but I didn't know what it was. And then I realized it was the content. It was just, it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And so I think that's why, authenticity and being yourself and letting your true self shine. Like I always say, I have this saying, and I didn't make this up, somebody else did, but I'm always like, let your freaky flags fly, because you are unique and there's nobody else like you. And when you are you have no competition. And you just, and there's an abundant amount of people in the world that are looking to work with someone who is exactly like you and no one else. And so you have to trust that. You have to trust that when you put your full self out there authentically, the right people will find you, and in the wrong people, you don't need to work with those people, right? If people are offended or they don't like it, or or whatever, they don't jive with you, it's okay. They can go somewhere else, because there's a lot of people in the world, and there's people out there looking to work with someone who's exactly like you. So you have to show them who you are.
What brings you the greatest joy with what you do?
Oh, I love when people, because one of the things I find in my space is I find a lot of people struggle with things like technology, mm-hmm. or they struggle with, sometimes it's even putting themselves out there in the social media space. And nothing brings me more joy than someone coming back going, I did it. Like I did it. Like I actually created the webpage, or I actually, went live, or I actually did this thing, and they've overcome this thing that was such a huge hurdle for them. And, all, like I said, it took was having some coach that believed in them and said, no, you can do this. Trust me, you can do this. And then watching them go and do it, and then come back and be like, so thrilled that they actually did it. I'm like, I know in my heart, my purpose is to help people live their purpose. And sometimes they need that little bit of a push to say, like, no, don't, I know it's scary, and I know you don't know right now, but I promise you, if you do this, it'll work out, and you're going to gain a whole new level of confidence because of it. And then they come back and they do. And to me, that's why I'm here.
Good for you. It's wonderful to be in a field where you can experience joy. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many people who work and they don't have joy in what they do, and you've created it. But I see that with entrepreneurs too, who've gotten so caught in the rat race of needing to make it that they've created a new nightmare for themselves in a way.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I say, like, I talk about this story about the feather, the brick, and the Mack truck. And the feather is that whisper. Like, to me, if you're going to work every day, or you're going and doing a job every day that it's rubbing you the wrong way, it's making you feel not at ease, it's not fun, like, that's the feather saying. And you probably know, because you're hearing a little whisper of going like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't love this anymore. Or maybe you're getting ideas of things that, like, oh, it'd be so great to be able to do this, and that's the feather kind of whispering in your ear that maybe it's time for a change. Like, now this is like, we need to move you out of this and into, something that's more your purpose. But if you don't listen to the feather, then in time you're going to get the brick, and the brick isn't as good. The brick doesn't feel as great, because the brick is going to be something more impactful, something that's going to force you to look at your purpose and what brings you joy, and moving towards that. And if you don't listen to the brick, then the Mack truck comes, and nobody wants the Mack truck. The Mack truck is like a major life-changing event that is usually not fun. And I know in my world, moving from network marketing to becoming an online business, like I mentioned this in the beginning, like I waited a year before I started that. And it was because I got a brick. We had a situation in our life financially. We had this like downturn. It's like a long story, but it was that downturn that in that situation we got put in that made me actually step up and start my online coaching business, because it was another stream of income for us. And so, but I had the feather, I had the messages a year prior to that I should be doing this. And so I listened to the brick. I started doing my business as soon as, that happened. And that's why if you're waking up every day and you're not feeling that joy, and you're getting that feeling inside that that you need to be looking into something else, then you should listen to that and explore it. And I always say to people, it doesn't mean you need to quit your job and start just doing something else, but you definitely need to start exploring, read a book, follow some people online that are doing that same thing, take an online class, or do something that gets you just a step closer to that, and eventually you'll find that you're so far ahead in that one that it's time to leave the one that's not bringing you joy anymore.
It is amazing how that works, and there is that balance always, isn't there?
100%.
So, Shana, we have been talking for close to half an hour, which seems hard to believe. But before we end, I want to just ask you thoughts that you want to share, things that we haven't talked about that you think are really important for people to think about if they're looking at starting an online business or an entrepreneurial type of endeavor. Mm-hmm. What would you say?
Well, kind of even similar.
That's okay.
We'll have to edit that. I really think that, we all have things that we want to do in life, and sometimes they are scary, and sometimes we are uncertain if they'll work out. And, I much like you were saying about joy, it's like I made a decision at the beginning of this year, of 2020, that I was only going to say yes to the things that brought me joy and that moved me towards my goals. And that everything else that didn't feel right or that wasn't good, that I was going to say no to. Because I'm a pleasing person. I'm somebody who says yes to everything and wants to help everyone. And I do, like I do, but you can only do so much. And this was the year that I was going to get super hyper focused on, doing the right things that are going to move my business and my goals forward. And so I would say, like, listen to your heart and listen to your voices and listen to those feelings, especially the feelings like what makes you feel good and what makes you, what lights you up and what brings you like joy and passion. And whatever that is, start doing a little bit more of that. Like I said, maybe you can't, quit a job or stop doing something completely, or, whatever's, maybe kind of blocking you from doing that, but you can start taking little steps. And it's in that action. It's always in the action that you're going to start getting the results. We can think about things all day long, right? We can think about things all day long, but if we're not actually putting an action behind it, it's not going to happen. And the reason you're getting the ideas and the thoughts that you're getting is because you're meant to carry it out. And so if you don't start taking even little baby steps to start just moving yourself towards those things, you may get the brick or the Mack truck someday. You don't want that. So just start taking action and start seeing where it takes you, and have faith and trust in the process, and that's one of the big things that I've really had to learn this year is just having faith that the situations and the things that are going on in my life and my business are there to serve me and help me move forward, and they're not there to hold me back. So it's learning from the obstacles. It's, realizing that if something gets canceled or paused, or, coronavirus happens or whatever, that those things are there because they're meant to be there. And there was a reason that that's happening, and so just to have faith in the process and just keep moving towards it. If it's bringing you joy and it's something you can't stop thinking about, you've got to explore it.
So part of what that says is you also have to take time for reflection. Mm-hmm. You can't identify what's happening without the Mack truck unless you're pausing to reflect on, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are your emotions?
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. Right? Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, in our journey, we've had a lot of discussions, a lot of talks. My husband and I'm very fortunate. He's very supportive, and we have, we're both on the same track when it comes to mindset and personal development, all these things. And, we have what we call Sunday morning chats over coffee, and we just reflect over where our businesses are, where we want to go with our goals, things that need to change or adjust. And so it is definitely taking that time to think and talk and explore.
Sunday morning coffee reflections. I like that idea. That's wonderful. Yeah. Shana, thank you so much for your time and for being with us today. And thank you all for listening to Building My Legacy podcast. And we will see you again very soon.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.